So this is like the part 2. So either way, like I said, like I get it. Like I know where the energy got entangled. I know what happened, and I got to see all this through multiple downloads and things of that nature. You know, from spirit and from God, but eventually got to the point where I wasn't in charge of assigning souls, you know, whenever that incident happened. Because I guess I was probably reincarnated on Earth at that time, you know, learning some things, and whatever happened to me happened, and about that time when that original soul was had to face its karma to come back into Earth, to come down to Earth's atmosphere, because essentially because of all the things that it just kept happening, and it was like too much, because we're meant to be multi-dimensional and to travel, you know, space and time and all that, and not really time because it's an illusion, but we're meant mainly just to go and just move freely, you know, throughout the universe. And you know, coming into the atmosphere of Earth, it caused a lot of things, and it just kept happening, and you know, at first I'm sure it was probably really great, and the signal kept saying, come here, so it was like temptation, right? And it's like, yeah, we're doing great, you know, and then it wasn't, and because God already knows there's all these contingencies that happen before that, and the thing has to be written in the contract so you can, you know, travel down and do this thing. But I guess I was here, and like I said, something happened, and so right before that other soul that was originally in the position of assigning souls, it came down, and then that's kind of, I guess, whenever I passed on and moved up, and I was in the position of assigning souls for a while. Can't really put a time on that because we move freely, you know, up there, and so I'm guessing at some point that soul reincarnated like like a nuclear engineer of some sorts, to create like bombs, you know, with enough energy to, you know, wake up the galaxy. So I wouldn't be surprised if that soul was Oppenheimer at some point. Probably was. The irony that movie just came out recently, and I think I said it before, it's just there's something there, and you know, there are things within Hollywood that I'm not so keen about, but there are still a lot of truths, you know, in those medias, because it's media, and when it comes to quantum mechanics, there's something called like the media permittivity or something like that, and it's what you see, you know, and what your thoughts are is what you're going to experience. And so that soul sent out that energy, you know, those bombs, and woke up the galaxies. And this is kind of whenever some things really shifted, you know, on Earth, and you know, got past, you know, the floodings and all that. Like, everyone's like, oh, the apocalypse, and like, that's not really gonna happen. There's something else that already has happened to prevent that, because it's not supposed to happen anymore, and it's really just us taking accountability for ourselves, but especially the U.S. is really horrible about it. But I know across the world there's this level of codependency on these systems. They're old systems, they don't work, and I've said that in many of my episodes, on my channel. And so at some point, my soulmate, because in heaven, I had a soulmate, and that was when, the irony that this lifetime, we were both in the military, but we both got out, but it was, it's kind of played out the same way, because it's as above, so below. You're within or you're going to go without, but, so my soulmate, sort of planning and did a deployment, into Earth's atmosphere, to help correct the trajectory, and, so then there was a point, because I'm in that situation, I was holding the cord, and eventually, it got to the point where our higher selves, there was a multiplication of particles and energy there, so our higher selves end up holding our cords, and we split, but because of how much we emitted, and the things through multiple lifetimes we learned, and the energy we created before getting, sent it up into heaven, in the atmosphere and then the galaxies, the universe, and all that, we were able to multiply, because God multiplies. So when there's really good energy, it will multiply over any negative energy. So it's kind of like how the twin flame stuff works. It's not really, I haven't heard anyone ever explain it that way, but that's how I know it, because it was the download that I got. And so so the twin flame thing is essentially when a heaven, like a soulmate connection in heaven, those two souls come back into Earth for probably our last rendezvous, but it's there are other ones that come along, but the split is different, the way that it works. So I spent a decent amount of my, or at least until my early 30s, trying to, it was like my early 20s, but I had found the other 50% of myself, and then a bunch of things happened, and then we saw each other again, and then all the energy was so massive that it created that that illusion of separation, but we were all still kind of there. But me being more tapped into the spirit and all the things, and the way that I've explained my experience with my twin flame is that I was tapping into not just my higher version, but the 3D version of my twin flame, and both of our higher versions of ourselves. And so that got really confusing, and then that's when I really started learning about how these multidimensional thoughts and things, and spaces can work, and then I essentially learned how to create safe spaces through that, and safer spaces. So the twin flame is like, we're two flames, and we came, their atmosphere is two flames, and the distress call happened, and essentially I was watching, and I was like, I can't take that anymore, and I came in, and then this time, because my twin called me down, because she reincarnated first, when it got to a certain point, that's whenever the energy switched, and we relayed kind of, and so she came out with a lot of truths, but there was a lot of dark things that were going on, and like I've said before, it was a lot, and I just had to unconditionally love her, through that, and forgive, and all those things. And so it's not like that was like hard for me, because I remembered that, I remembered the love, and I just remembered the light, and that's all I could remember, and I seen it, and I felt it, but I didn't quite know how to explain it, like I've said in many of my videos, it was like all the things I talked about was a lot, and so I get it when it comes to, how this works, and sort of the solution, to, not sort of, but this is the solution, that I know is the most effective to beat the devil, at its own game. And like I said, even at this, part in my journey, the devil has still tried to use sexual energy, not the sacred type, but just the regular sex energy, to try to pull me in, and that's the only thing it has left. And I'm like, no, I was like, I was able to push that away when this all started, because that almost happened in the beginning of this, and I've talked about that, but like I have discernment, and so I pushed it away, and luckily it wasn't very tempting, and so I went into a state of, practicing celibacy to stay relevant, and that's just what it is. And the devil didn't like that, and so there were other things that it tried to do to create these things, because it knew, and like I said, I got the downloads when I was very young, and that's just what it is. And so I won. Like I said, I fought the devil and I won, but I lead more with the heart than my twin does, but my twin has that in her, and so that's the thing that I was like, and then, but it was like, she was telling me, like, because the devil had her psyche, and was like, but and I'm like, okay, well, we both know, because like we before reincarnating on Earth, like, we were both very we held those degrees as doctors of divinity, and so we held very high positions, and so it got we left our table to come and whatever, but we had to remember. And so, like, we both get it. Like, we both get it. We both have the same degree as doctors of divinity in this lifetime. But we had to remember our divinity. And that kind of sucked. But once I figured it out, and my twin kind of already knew, but there were still some things where I was like, you remember this, that this is how we did this, we didn't do it like this. And so it was like trying to get my twin psyche out of the hand of the devil, and that's why being tapped into your heart chakra is the most important part of this. And so it goes into thinking, like, it's like, well, how are we doing in teaching, sex education, and we should just rename it, because it not really rename it, but add to it more, not be lazy with it, just add to it more. So that's why I call it, SSESSIT, the SSESSIT course. And the reason for the 3 days, because everything happens in threes, and so it'd be, the females and the males, they got 2 days with the female teaching the females, and the males teaching the males. I think that's kind of how they did it back in the day. When I went through it, I think it was like in 7th grade, ironically, 7, and that's used through spirituality and like all different things. And so, and then on the 3rd day, what happens, because in the military we would kind of break things down, and so by the 3rd day, the lesson's already been taught, and the 3rd day is whenever the males and the females, come together in the same one. I'm using the heterosexual example, but it obviously applies across because it's all inclusive. But because the quote procreation and reproductive system is based in heterosexual relationships, that is why I'm using that, and it's not me trying to speak ill or negative. It's just, this is the best example because that it's the quicker way to create another life. And in the LGBTQ plus community, we have to, if we don't already have kids from a previous thing, like that, the process is a lot, has more steps, so it's more premeditated before we create another life, and a lot of them end up just adopting and fostering children, but it's a lot more premeditation and mindfulness that goes into it than just like, let's just go ahead and do this, and then an accident happens, and it's not really an accident, because all children are intended, to be born by God. If you have one, there is something, and there's a responsibility, at the soul level to help them remember, and be their guide and their coach and all these things. And you still be friends and all that, but there's so much more that goes into it than what society allows to be believed. And so that's where this all comes in, because before I was even the age of 12, I was able to tap into my DCO, which is like my Doctor of Civil Law. And so in the spirit, that being able to tap into that at such a young age, and being authentic at that age, and never losing my inner child, I was able to keep whatever energy I absorbed, to help build my energy, my frequency up, to prepare me for what I just went through with my twin, and especially in the separation phase. But when it comes to the during part, it's all about just remembering, because we're trying to get away from here and back to heaven. But because some souls want to get brave, and then the things happen, and it was like, when come in, it's like sending in the army of the Lord, and then the things happen. But there's always contingencies, so we have to remember them. And naturally our soul, because it is light, will go towards the light, and the most light is from the stars, because the stars are what generates light in the night and in the darkness. So those are already things spoken about in spirituality, and they're already kind of things spoken more naturally, I think, these days than before. But but I want to get back to the point where when it comes to how we've been, we'll reproduce. So like the law of attraction, so obviously that hits our crown, right? And so then it goes, to our third eye, and then we see with our eyes, and that's that attraction point. And the eyes are the key to the soul, right? And so then, you say things out your mouth and use your throat chakra. And then the term, you make my heart skip a beat, I don't know if I'm like quite okay with that term anymore, just because in that, like, it might sound romantic, but there's a negative hidden element that I feel like is an unconscious thing that people say. So when the heart skips a beat, it's like it, in that moment, you, it's kind of like when someone sneezes and someone says bless you, because there's that moment of pause, and that's when the devil can creep in there. So you skip the heart, because the devil can't touch it, because the heart's not tied to the matrix. But it can hit it tries to get to all the other ones, but the heart is not the one. And that's why we have Jesus come in and save us, the heart. And like I said, you don't have to do that publicly. You can do that in your own privacy of your home with somebody else, or do it in your soul, because God already knows. That's between you and God. And it ain't no one's business how God has your purpose, and the contract you all agreed on before you got here. And that's been a big issue. But a lot of it has to do with reproduction and the Watergate, and being born out of, the base of the woman. And so when it comes to sexual energy, in the more 3D, it's usually, it starts from the head and then it skips the heart, and then it kind of goes over, the solar plexus and the sacral, and it goes straight to the base. And then there's the stuff that happens in the base, and then it again, it's just like everything keeps going over the hill of the heart, or it doesn't even reach the higher thing. It creates a thought still of like a climax or some sorts of that, but it's not heartfelt. And there are some that genuinely, that does happen, like that process does happen genuinely. I'm not saying that it doesn't happen at all, it does, but it doesn't happen enough to the point where it can create enough to beat the devil at its own game. And so it's like these souls just keep reproducing into this world, in a low vibrational state, because it's not a conscience and thought out thing. So this is where the tantra and all that comes into play, but this is even more than that. And I've read a few books, I've listened to a couple audiobooks, I've kind of researched up in that, but and I can get deeper into it, but I'm just trying to get the main point across, to activate the premeditated thoughts that I already initially had. That was a more organized pathway for the electromagnetic field, because like I said, I'm ADHD, and sometimes I'm just not, the things. But so the trick here is to create closer bonds, and through this I know that there will be it'll change the way we do partnerships, not just in romance but platonic, because it's not all. The unfortunate part about this is this is where that thing that's been missing for the creation part, because it's been so encumbered with the low vibration that people even forgot how to create. And then we create AI, and everyone's like, oh, AI is going to take over. It's like, but you get to choose, because there's two different types of AI. There's artificial intelligence and advanced intelligence. Our souls are the advanced intelligence. They're the aliens, the extraterrestrials. But we have to remember that, and we have to be authentic in that. And in our divine, and the Bible even mentions aliens like 30 times in there, the strangers, I think the Gentiles and all these other things. I did a couple episodes about that, but so it's just remembering your soul core frequency. That's what it is. And so whenever we have our interactions with our partners, and it don't matter if you're heterosexual or not, the process of this, I'm about to get kind of vulnerable, and one experience I had when I was 16. Ironically, when I was 15, this is when I kind of hit my psychology, when I tapped into my psychology degree that I had in a past life, and kind of generated it in this one, but it was still kind of hidden, and it wasn't really, I had to do some things to get that unveiled, but I was 15 when that one happened. So right after my DCL, I went into my psychology and degree, and it was this actually, a lot of what I do now had a lot of alignment with the way that I thought then, just because I knew that the psychology was going to have something to do with this. And in my first episode on here on YouTube, remember me talking about how I mainly deal with the spiritual and the psychological domains, and the financials kind of in there too, but I can really deal with any of them, but there was a spiritual and psychology one for this one, and women were naturally made, for psychological warfare, but it's balancing out all those energies, because it's a lot. You do have to get delusional, and that's okay. You have to get delusional to delete the illusion, and so when you think of the word delusion, you split it in half. You got D-E-L, so delete, and then the illusion, and the illusion. So it's the illusion that makes you ill, that makes you forget. When you're so sick, you forget who and what you are at the soul, your core soul frequency. So when it comes to us, when I was saying, like, I hit that when I was like 15. So when I was 16, I had this boyfriend, and of course, when you're about that age, you kind of start experimenting, trying to figure things out. So there was a moment of, I'm not going to say it was intimacy, but it was oral, and and I remember thinking, hey, I was already thinking, like, my soul came out in that moment, because I wasn't the type to really just kind of go do whatever with whoever. I mean, it had to really mean something to me, and I thought it did, and but I had to go through this experience, and here I'm talking about it now. I haven't really talked about it ever to anyone, I don't think, and but I remember, I was speaking to his male genital, and he thought that was weird, and said some things to me that were not nice, and it hurt my feelings, and so that kind of stopped me from furthering that. But through this whole twin flame situation, and recently there was a solar flare on September 1st. And this is Virgo season, so Virgo is like the gut area and things like that. So that's like the solar and plexus and the sacral, kind of area. But and like I said, I was a past life Virgo, so the fact that I was able to get this download and have this enlightenment after that solar flare occurred, it was like a more intense Mercury retrograde, but it was more of like a, here's the message, we put it out, and I'm like, oh, okay, now I remember, but so it happened. But my point of that is that I knew that at the age of 16, when I was really in my psyche, in my intentions, leading with my heart. So that I connected the heart and the mind when I was 15. And I had some other things happen when I was 15, having to do with my ancestors and getting those downloads as well, as far as matriarch stuff goes. But yeah, so that happened. So I remembered that, and then I was like, I've already had these thoughts about, and these downloads about, what could save humanity from the continuation of these broken systems, because we're all born and we all kind of have a system, and then we're our own programming, you know, and society and the devil, you know, makes you forget those things. And so I know that it's not like, that's why some of us come in and we're reincarnated as, you know, earth angels, you know, and these flesh suits, and feel all the things, so these conversations, these truths can be illuminated. So with this, it comes down to that, where we have to start educating our youth, and even the adults, you know, about speaking words into our partners' genital areas. And in ancient times they called the female one the Yoni and the male one the Phallus, and so that's kind of how I like to refer to it. But that was like the ancient, so it was like bringing it all back to ancient times and going from that base, because that's about the furthest I can kind of go, and as much as I found, you know, about it. And so I don't know if they did that then, but I'm saying, like, this is the thing, this is the process that needs to happen, because it's not only just that, but it's also an opportunity to, you know, love your partner and love yourself and show yourself love by allowing that process to happen. And like I said, I only experienced this one time, but I do intentionally plan on, you know, trying this again, you know, with my twin flame, because I already know that by speaking good and from into the base chakra, it is received from there, and it can go all the way up by speaking the words first. You're spelling it out, your intentions and everything. And like, is it weird at first? Yes, but that's the trick to those, that you're deleting the old program of just we see, and then we do this, and that happens, and then the things happen. You know, it's first pre-creating. You know, mindfully and mentally in thought, your intentions. And so you can start by just, you know, you before y'all, you know, before we start the friction process, okay, the momentum process with the friction, the best way I know how to say it, to stay kind of YouTube friendly, but you know, you just kind of go down there and you just, you know, introduce yourself. Like, my name is this, and you know, these are what my intentions are, and you know, my intentions are to love you and respect you, and like, as if you would to say it to their face, and that doesn't even really happen, you know. So it's doing something different, and it really flips the script on this. And so speaking into the base of your partner, and you can look at it in a scientific way. You can go get I call it an APD, which is an artificial pleasuring device. I know most society calls these, quote, toys, but I don't. I really don't look at sacred sexual energy as a thing to be using toys, because then it's like a game, and I'm really trying to push and I've written, you know, the narrative and the code to get away from those words and those vibrational words, because they already have negative frequencies attached to them. And this is the best way I know how to help create the baselines. And my love language, like I said, is building, so I build strong foundations. My twin flame and I both are have that same love language, but we know how to use the other love languages within that, because in order to get those, you had to have a foundation. And so we really take it back, because we're ancient souls, and they're just the things we knew and we know, you know. Once you know when you grow. So but yeah, so this is I'm gonna have a more breakdown of it. That you know, eventually I'm gonna. My intentions are to get this out. And I set the intention first to release it to the universe and God, and I prayed before I even came on here to do this message, but my intentions are to get this new the SSESSIT course up and running in the year 2025, before the school year starts in year 2025, which will be in the Virgo energy again, which are analytical. And ironically, the school, you know, starts in the analytical season, or a little bit before that, so from Leo to Virgo. But I found that interesting. But it's also significant because here in this book that I have here, I'm going to read it. But it talks about Virgo. It says, you know, the constellation of Virgo resembles the outline of a young woman. The symbol owes its design to a monogram of, I should have looked that symbol up, but it looks like 2 Roman numerals AP, which are the first 3 letters of the Greek word parenthos, meaning virgin. She is also known as the maiden, which is an ancient word for a young woman who was considered to be a virgin. She is usually shown carrying a sheaf of wheat representing the harvest, which may relate to the time of the year in which this sign rules, late August and the first 3 weeks of September, when many different crops are harvested. So that goes into what I, you know, have talked about seed planting our seeds. So for now, this is what I have, and those are my intentions, and those are, you know, the goals for the souls, umbrellaed by my intentions. And so it's writing the new for the collective, and how we view, you know, sexual energy. And like I said, I say it a sacred sexual energy, because using the word sacred first already takes away from what society has noted as sex, and it doesn't, in the way it's been used and abused. And so this is also the semantic therapy of that I use to write the quantum code to put this energy out, you know, across the electromagnetic field and the frequencies, to speak to the souls, you know, and to bypass the flesh, because it's different. And I know it's different because something else happened this morning, and it shifted something. But that solar flare, I felt it, and it was just confirmation that, you know, we need to burn the old and bring the new. And like I talked before, like about me being a fire sign, you know, there's enough in me to cause a secondary succession. So this is mainly what this is, but my intentions are set for school year starting in 2025, which is a spiritual year, for sure. And this is the year of like good karma, and we're getting back what we, you know, put in. But you know, I'm sure it'll happen a lot before then, to preset it, to kind of help train more of the adult collective. But when it comes to next year, school year, I'm sure it'll already be set by then, and it won't take me long to put it all together, because I already had it written out. But it took a lot of energy just to premeditate it all and get it out there, and just to have the thoughts created, you know, and the processes created. And you know, it sounds like a jumbled mess right now, but I promise you, it's definitely not. And so there's a lot of these processes, a lot of there's different ones to it, but there's only one really main process, and you know, it's covered in a lot of protection, and it's done working with God, you know, and not for God, but working with God. And so yeah, I just wanted to come on here and put that out there, and you know, sort of, to tell you all, you know, what my degree is actually in, and that's, you know, a Doctor of Divinity. And so that my DCL, you know, degree, they're above all a lot of the other degrees, but I try not to talk about it because I'm not full of myself like that. But that is part of my truth, and I appreciate you all for listening, and I look forward to getting the rest of the message out there. And stay blessed, be good, love and light. Bye.